screaming and shouting on the road? What caused this? The story begins.
The night was dark, with thick clouds covering the moon. A cold wind blew through the tall trees, making eerie whistling sounds. Inside a grand mansion in Enugu, Obinna Nwokedi sat alone in his large living room. The room was filled with expensive chairs, shiny glass tables, and paintings from all over the world. But Obinna didn't care about any of that tonight. His eyes were fixed on a small framed photo of his younger brother, Chuka, who had died just a week ago. Obinna's face looked tired, his eyes red from crying. He had always believed that money could solve any problem. After all, he was one of the richest men in Enugu. But now, all his money couldn't bring back Chuka. "I can't lose you like this, Chuka," he whispered, his voice shaking. "There must be a way to bring you back." His housekeeper, Neka, quietly entered the room, carrying a tray with food. "Oga, you haven't eaten since morning," she said softly. Obinna didn't even look at her. "Take it away," he snapped. "I'm not hungry." Neka sighed and left the room, shaking her head. She had worked for Obinna for years and had never seen him like this. Obinna stood up suddenly, knocking over the glass of water on the table. His heart was racing with a wild idea. What if death isn't the end? He had heard stories growing up, tales about powerful daibuyas who could do things that seemed impossible. Maybe they were true. Maybe someone out there could bring Chuka back. Without wasting time, Obinna grabbed his phone and called his old friend Ikenna, who knew people in the dark corners of the city. "Ikenna," Obinna said as soon as the call connected. "I need your help." "What's wrong, Obinna?" Ikenna asked, surprised. "I need to find someone who knows how to deal with the dead." There was silence on the other end. Then Ikenna whispered, "Obinna, are you sure you want to go down that road? It's dangerous." "I don't care," Obinna replied firmly. "I have money. I'll pay whatever it takes." Ikenna sighed. "All right, I know a man. His name is Mazi Eze. He runs a nightclub in Enugu. But be careful, Obinna. Eze is not the kind of man you can trust." Obinna's lips curled into a cold smile. "I don't need to trust him. I just need him to help me bring Chuka back." As Obinna ended the call, a strange feeling crept over him. The lights flickered for a moment, and he thought he heard a faint whisper, like someone calling his name. He turned around quickly, but no one was there. His heart pounded. Was it just his mind playing tricks on him? Or was something else already watching? The next evening, Obinna arrived at a place called Eze's Palace, a notorious nightclub in the heart of Enugu. The bright neon lights flashed red and blue, casting strange shadows on the street. Loud music thumped from inside, mixing with the voices of people laughing, shouting, and dancing. But Obinna wasn't there for fun. He had only one thing on his mind: finding Mazi Eze. He pushed open the heavy door. The strong smell of alcohol, sweat, and cheap perfume filled the air. Colorful lights danced across the smoky room where men and women moved to the beat, their faces hidden in the haze. But Obinna walked straight through them, his eyes sharp, his face cold. At the back of the club sat a tall man in a white linen shirt, gold chains gleaming around his thick neck. His name was Mazi Eze. He lounged like a king on a black leather couch, a glass of palm wine in one hand, and his other arm draped lazily around a beautiful woman with fierce eyes and red lips, Amaka. She looked like trouble wrapped in beauty. Obinna didn't wait for an invitation. He walked up to them, his voice firm. "I'm looking for Mazi Eze." Eze's sharp eyes flicked up, amused by Obinna's boldness. "You found him. But you don't look like you're here to drink or dance. What do you want?" Obinna leaned closer, his voice low. "I hear you know people who can do things beyond the ordinary." Eze chuckled, sipping his drink. "You mean DBS, right? Or maybe something darker?" "I need someone who can bring my brother back from the dead." Obinna's words hung heavy in the smoky air. For a second there was silence. Then Amaka laughed softly, her voice like honey mixed with poison. "You're serious?" she asked, her sharp eyes narrowing. Eze leaned forward, his face now serious. "Bringing back the dead isn't like buying a drink, my friend. It's dangerous, costly, and sometimes it goes very wrong. Obinna didn't flinch. I'll pay anything. Just tell me who can do it. Eze studied Obinna's face, seeing the desperation behind his cold eyes. Then he smiled, a slow, greedy smile. Maybe I know someone, but first we need to talk about my price. Obinna nodded without hesitation. Name it. Eze's grin grew wider. Not here. Meet me tomorrow night. I'll introduce you to someone who deals with the kind of spirits you're chasing. As Obinna turned to leave, Amaka whispered to Eze, "This one is different. He's not afraid." Eze chuckled softly. Fear comes later. Outside, as Obinna walked back to his car, he felt a sudden chill in the air. The street was empty, but he thought he heard footsteps behind him. When he turned, no one was there. Just the flickering streetlights and the whisper of the wind. But something, or someone, was watching. Whispers. Obinna paused, his eyes darting around the dark street. Shadows stretched long under the flickering streetlights. He could have sworn someone or something was watching him, but when he turned sharply, there was no one there. Just the cold night air brushing against his skin. He shook his head. I'm just tired, he thought, unlocking his car. But as he slipped into the driver's seat, he caught a glimpse of something in the rearview mirror. A shadow moving quickly across the road. His heart raced. He spun around, but again, nothing. Only the empty street and the distant hum of the nightclub's music. Maybe it's starting already, he thought with a shiver. Maybe the dead can hear me. The next night, Obinna met Eze in a hidden corner of the city, a rundown building behind the market, far from curious eyes. Inside, the air smelled of damp earth, candle wax, and something metallic, like rust or blood. Eze was waiting, dressed in black from head to toe, with Amaka by his side, her sharp eyes gleaming in the dim light. Are you sure about this? Eze asked, his voice low. Obinna nodded. I'm sure. Eze led him deeper into the building, down narrow hallways covered in strange symbols drawn with red chalk. They reached a small, dark room lit only by a single flickering candle. In the center sat an old man, hunched over with a face full of deep wrinkles. His name was Mazi Okoye, a powerful dibia known for dealing with the spirits of the dead. His eyes, cloudy and white, seemed to see straight into Obinna's soul, so Mazi Okoye croaked. You want to disturb the spirits? You want to bring back the dead? Obinna swallowed hard. Yes, my brother. Okoye chuckled darkly. The dead do not like to be disturbed, young man. They come back hungry, angry, or lost. Are you ready to pay the price? Obinna's hands clenched into fists. I'll pay anything. Okoye's cloudy eyes glinted. Not with money. The spirits don't care for Naira. They demand something else. Something precious. Obinna frowned. What do you mean? Eze leaned closer, his smile thin. Your life will never be the same after this. You might lose more than just money. Obinna didn't hesitate. I don't care. Just bring him back. Okoye nodded slowly. Then we begin tomorrow night. But remember, when the dead return, they come with shadows you cannot control. And as Obinna left that night, the shadows felt thicker, the whispers louder, but he ignored them. All he wanted was his brother back. He didn't realize he had just opened a door that could never be closed. The night of the ritual arrived. Obinna was nervous, but his determination pushed aside any trace of fear. He drove to the abandoned building once more, his mind racing with thoughts of Chuka. This will work, he kept telling himself. It has to work. Eze and Amaka were already waiting for him when he arrived, their faces unreadable. Mazi Okoye was seated in the same dark room, his back to the door. Candles flickered around the edges of the room, casting long shadows that danced eerily across the walls. Okoye didn't look up when Obinna entered. Are you ready? He asked in his crackling voice, as if he already knew the answer. Obinna nodded. Yes, let's begin. Eze handed Obinna a small, sharpened knife. You know the rules, my friend. The spirits demand a blood offering. Obinna's fingers tightened around the hilt of the knife, his heartbeat quickening. I understand. With a steady hand, Obinna cut a small mark on his palm, wincing at the sharp pain. Blood dripped slowly onto the floor. Okoye began chanting in a low cultural language, his voice growing louder with every word. The room seemed to grow colder. The shadows stretched unnaturally long, and the flame from the candles flickered wildly, as if fighting against the dark. "Is this really necessary?" Obinna asked, feeling a growing unease. His skin was crawling. Okoye ignored him, his eyes locked on the dark corner of the room where the shadows seemed to gather. "Silence. Let the spirits hear." Suddenly, the temperature in the room dropped, and the candles flickered out one by one. Obinna's breath came out in small, visible puffs. His hands trembled, and for the first time doubt crept into his mind. The air thickened, and a low hum began to fill the room, rising in pitch until it was almost unbearable. Obinna could hear the whispers again, only this time they weren't just in his head. The voices were clear, speaking in rapid succession, like a crowd of people speaking at once. "Chuka, Chuka." Obinna's heart skipped a beat. The voice was unmistakable. It was his brother's voice. He turned quickly, looking for any sign of Chuka, but the room was empty, save for the others standing frozen, staring into the darkness. "Where is he?" Obinna whispered, his voice tight. Ize stepped forward, his eyes wide with fear. "It's happening. He's coming." But before anyone could say another word, the shadows in the corner of the room seemed to shift and twist. A shape began to form, a figure, tall and thin with glowing eyes. It was Chuka. Obinna's heart leapt. "Chuka, my brother!" he cried, reaching out for the figure. But when Chuka stepped into the candlelight, Obinna recoiled. This was not the Chuka he remembered. Chuka's eyes were empty, hollow, like dark pools of nothing. His face was pale and distorted, twisted in a grotesque manner. His mouth hung open, but no words came out. His hands were cold and stiff, and his body moved in jerky, unnatural motions like a puppet controlled by invisible strings. "Chuka?" Obinna whispered, his voice cracking. The figure didn't respond. Instead, it stared at Obinna with those lifeless eyes, and then slowly, its mouth curled into a wicked, unnatural grin. Suddenly, Chuka lurched forward, grabbing Obinna by the throat with inhuman strength. "Obinna!" A voice rasped from the shadows, but it wasn't Chuka's. It was something darker. Obinna struggled, gasping for air. His vision blurred, and everything around him seemed to spin. Eze and Amaka were shouting, but their voices felt far away, muffled. Okoye stood calmly, watching as Obinna fought for breath, as if he were a mere spectator. The last thing Obinna saw before his world went black was Chuka's cold, dead eyes, filled with a haunting emptiness that sent a chill through his soul. Obinna's eyes fluttered open to the sound of distant voices. His head throbbed, and his throat burned as if he had been choked. His entire body ached, and for a moment he couldn't remember where he was or what had happened. When he opened his eyes fully, the dim light of the room made everything seem hazy. He was lying on the cold, hard floor. Eze and Amaka stood over him, their faces filled with concern, though something in their eyes didn't sit right. "Obinna," Eze said, his voice strained. "Are you all right?" Obinna tried to sit up but felt dizzy. He looked around, taking in his surroundings. They were still in the same room, but everything felt off. The air was heavy, thick with a sense of dread that clung to his skin. "What happened?" Obinna asked, his voice hoarse. Amaka knelt beside him, her fingers brushing his forehead. "You passed out. After Chuka, he grabbed you. We thought—" She trailed off, her eyes flickering nervously to Eze. "What do you mean, after Chuka?" Obinna's heart raced. He shot up to his feet. "Where is he? Where's my brother?" Eze exchanged a nervous glance with Amaka. "He's gone. The ritual. It didn't work the way we expected." "What do you mean it didn't work?" Obinna's voice cracked, a wild panic rising within him. "Chuka, he came back. I saw him. He was here." Okoye's gravelly voice cut through the tension. "The spirit is back, yes, but it is not your brother anymore." Obinna turned to face the old man, his hands trembling. "What do you mean? He looked like Chuka." Okoye shook his head slowly. "That was not your brother. What returned is not human. It is a shadow, a lost soul that cannot rest. And now, it has claimed your brother's form." The words hit Obinna like a slap. His chest tightened as if the air had been sucked out of the room. "So, Chuka is dead? And that thing isn't him?" "No," Okoye replied. "The dead, once they return, come with pieces of what they were. But they are no longer the people you knew. They are the empty echoes of the past, hungry for what they lost." Obinna staggered back, his mind racing. This wasn't what he had wanted. This wasn't what he had promised himself. He had begged for his brother's return, but he had not imagined this nightmare. Ize's voice broke through his thoughts. "This was a mistake, Obinna. We all knew it was risky. But now there's no going back. That thing, your brother's body, is still out there." Amaka's eyes narrowed. "And it's angry." The room fell silent, the weight of those words sinking into the air. Obinna's mind raced. He had thought bringing Chuka back would fix everything. But now, his brother's return had unleashed something far worse than he could ever have imagined. "What do I do now?" Obinna whispered, his voice shaking. Okoye's eyes glinted in the dim light. "You have to make a choice, Obinna. You can either keep chasing after the ghost of your brother, or you can end this before it destroys everything you care about." Obinna's chest tightened. He didn't want to give up. He couldn't, but how could he stop something so powerful? Something that wasn't even truly his brother. "You need to find it," Okoye continued, his voice low. "And you need to stop it. If you don't, it will take more than just your brother. It will take your life, and the lives of everyone you love." Obinna turned to Ize, his eyes filled with desperation. "How do I find it? How do I stop it?" Ize hesitated, then spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. "I know someone who deals with things like this. But it won't come cheap." "I'll pay anything," Obinna said urgently. "Just help me. I need to make this right." Ize nodded, his face serious. "All right, but know this, Obinna. The price for playing with the dead is always higher than you think. You may not be able to fix this." The room, the darkness outside seemed even deeper, and the air felt heavier. He had brought Chuka back, but now he had to face the terrifying consequences. The dead had returned, but what they brought with them was something far worse than death itself. The next day felt like a dream to Obinna. Everything was hazy, like he was walking through a fog. He couldn't shake the image of Chuka's lifeless, twisted face from his mind. His brother's return had been a nightmare, and yet he couldn't bring himself to believe it was truly over. He had to do something. He had to make things right. Ize had promised to help, but Obinna knew that nothing came easy in this world, especially when dealing with the spirits of the dead. He couldn't stop wondering what price he would have to pay. He had no choice but to find out. Later that evening, Obinna met with Ize at a quiet corner of the local market. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the narrow alleys. The air felt thick, as though something dangerous was lurking, waiting. Ize was pacing back and forth, looking over his shoulder every few seconds, as though expecting someone to jump out from behind the market stalls. When he saw Obinna, he motioned for him to hurry. "Come on, let's go," Ize said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We don't want to be seen." Obinna followed him through the winding paths of the market, avoiding the crowded areas where the villagers gathered. The closer they got to their destination, the more tense Obinna became. He had a bad feeling in his stomach. Eventually, they reached a small, decrepit hut at the edge of the village. The walls were covered in creeping vines, and the door creaked on its hinges. Ize knocked twice and stepped aside to let Obinna pass. Inside the hut, a woman sat by a fire. She was ancient, with gray hair and a face so weathered that it seemed carved from stone. Her eyes glowed unnaturally bright, like the embers of the fire burning in front of her. "Chizor," Ize said, bowing his head in respect. The woman, Chizor, didn't say a word. She simply stared at Obinna, her eyes piercing him as if she could see into his very soul. "I need your help," Obinna said, his voice shaky. "My brother, something terrible has happened. He's come back from the dead, but it's not really him. It's something worse." Chizor didn't move, her gaze never leaving Obinna. After what felt like an eternity, she spoke in a low, rasping voice. "You seek to undo what you have done." Obinna nodded. "Yes, I need to stop him. He's not my brother anymore. He's something else." "Then you must pay the price," Chizor said flatly, her voice like gravel. Obinna's heart skipped a beat. "What price?" Chizor's lips curled into a thin, wicked smile. "The dead demand a price. Always." Ize stepped forward, his expression serious. "It won't be easy. The dead never forget, Obinna. And once they've been disturbed, they are not quick to forgive." Obinna clenched his fists. "I don't care. I'll pay anything to make this right." Chizor nodded slowly. "Very well. But know this. You cannot undo the past. What has been done to the dead can never be fully undone. It will come for you." Obinna swallowed hard, his throat dry. He couldn't let that stop him. He had to try. "I'm ready," he said firmly. Chizor motioned for him to sit by the fire. She began to chant in an ancient language, her voice soft but powerful, like the wind howling through a storm. As she spoke, the room grew colder, and Obinna felt a chill in his bones. The fire flickered, casting strange shadows on the walls. Suddenly, Chizor's voice stopped. The silence was deafening. "Bring him to me," she said. Obinna's heart raced. "What do you mean? Bring who? Your brother?" Chizor replied, her gaze hard. "He will not leave unless you bring him. You must offer him one last chance to leave this world." Obinna's eyes widened. "You mean I have to bring him here?" Ize spoke quietly, his tone dark. "Yes, you must confront him, and you must make him choose. Live again as the thing he is now, or leave this world forever." Obinna's mind was spinning. How can I make him choose? But before he could ask, Chizor held out her hand, palm open. "I need something from you," she said. Obinna felt his heart sink. "What?" Chizor's voice dropped to a whisper. "A piece of yourself. A life must be taken to pay for another's. You know what that means." Obinna felt sick to his stomach. He had hoped the cost wouldn't be too high, but now it was clear. He had to make a choice, and the price would be something he couldn't take back. Obinna's heart pounded in his chest. The air in the hut felt thicker now, heavy with the weight of Chizor's words. His mind raced, trying to make sense of what she had said. A life must be taken to save another. A piece of yourself. He couldn't fathom it. How could he choose someone else's life for the sake of his brother? But then, his thoughts turned to Chuka, the brother he had loved, the brother he had watched grow, only to be torn away by a cruel twist of fate. If Chuka could return, he would be whole again, wouldn't he? But what if Chuka's soul was lost forever, a part of him destroyed by the ritual? What if he was beyond saving? Chizor's voice cut through his thoughts. "The choice is yours, Obinna. The dead cannot be bargained with. What you decide now will echo for eternity." Obinna swallowed hard, trying to steady his nerves. He couldn't back down. Not now. He had to save Chuka. He would do whatever it took. He nodded, though his hands trembled. "What do I have to do?" Chizor's sharp eyes gleamed as she stood up and moved toward a small wooden chest at the back of the hut. She opened it slowly, revealing a set of strange carved bones. They were long and thin, worn by time but radiating a strange energy that sent a shiver down Obinna's spine. "These are the bones of the spirit world," Chizor said. "You must place them in the path of the dead. Only then will they show themselves." She turned to Obinna, her expression stern. "But be warned. Once you open the door between worlds, you cannot close it easily." Obinna's breath caught in his throat. The door between worlds. Was that even possible? Could he truly bring Chuka back without unleashing something worse? Ize stepped forward, his eyes shadowed with worry. "Obinna, you don't understand," The dead. They're not like us. What you're asking is dangerous, even for someone like Chizor. But Obinna was past listening. His mind was already made up. I'll do it. I'm not leaving without Chuka. Chizor's eyes glimmered with something darker now. She placed the bones into Obinna's hands. Then go. Find your brother, and let him choose. But remember, nothing comes without a price. Obinna left the hut with the bones clutched tightly in his hands. Ize walked beside him, his face grim, but Obinna barely noticed. His heart was set on one thing, bringing his brother back. They reached the clearing where the ritual had taken place the night before. The air felt still, as if the earth itself was holding its breath. The shadows of the trees stretched long across the ground, and the moon hung low, casting a ghostly glow. Place the bones in the center, Chizor's voice echoed in Obinna's mind. Call to him. Obinna kneeled in the center of the clearing, his heart thundering in his chest. He placed the bones carefully on the ground, forming a circle. He closed his eyes and spoke softly, his voice trembling as he called out for Chuka. Chuka, he whispered, come back, please. I need you. The wind shifted, carrying with it the faintest whispers, like voices calling from far away. The earth beneath Obinna's knees seemed to tremble, and then a shadow emerged from the darkness. At first it looked like nothing more than a wisp of smoke, but slowly, the shape of a man began to form. Tall, broad-shouldered, with familiar features. Obinna's breath caught in his throat. It was Chuka, or at least it looked like him. Chuka? Obinna said, his voice barely a whisper. The figure stepped forward, but something was wrong. The eyes were hollow, dark, and empty, as though no soul resided within them. A cold, unnatural air surrounded him. Obinna took a step back. It's not him, Ize whispered, his voice full of dread. That's not Chuka. The figure raised its head slowly, the air growing colder with each passing second. It smiled, but it wasn't a smile of joy. It was a twisted, cruel grin. The figure's lips parted, revealing sharp, jagged teeth. You called me, the figure said, its voice echoing with an unnatural, eerie resonance. But you don't know what you've done. Obinna's blood ran cold. This wasn't Chuka. This was something else. Something far worse. Chuka, Obinna said desperately, his voice shaking. Please, come back. This isn't you. The figure laughed, a sound that sent chills down Obinna's spine. You cannot bring the dead back, Obinna. You have opened the door to something much darker. And now, there is no turning back. Obinna felt a chill run through his veins as the ground beneath him began to tremble. The figure's form began to distort, shifting like smoke. It was as if the very fabric of reality was being torn apart. Choose, Obinna, the figure hissed, its voice growing more and more distorted. Live with the consequence of your actions, or let me take your soul in exchange. Obinna's breath caught in his throat. He had to act fast, but how could he stop something like this? Obinna's heart raced as the figure before him began to twist and distort, its form flickering like a flame in the wind. The air was heavy with the scent of death, and the world around him seemed to hold its breath, waiting for his next move. The ground beneath his feet vibrated with an eerie energy, as though the earth itself was rebelling against the disturbance he had caused. Chuka, he whispered desperately, his voice cracking. Please come back. I don't want to lose you. I can't lose you. The figure grinned wider, its eyes now completely black. Your brother is gone, Obinna. There is only darkness left. You've awakened what should have stayed buried. Obinna felt a cold sweat bead on his forehead. He wasn't just fighting for his brother anymore. He was fighting for his own soul. The darkness that surrounded the figure seemed to creep closer, pulling him in, threatening to swallow him whole. Ize, standing beside him, clenched his fists. Obinna, you've made a mistake. This isn't Chuka. It never was. Obinna glanced at Ize, his mind racing. He didn't have much time. The figure was growing more solid, more powerful, and he knew that whatever he had done, there was no way to undo it now. But there had to be a way to stop this. He had to make the right choice. "Choose, Obinna," the figure hissed, its voice now a low growl. "Your soul, or his." It extended a bony hand towards him. "Give yourself to the darkness and I will let him rest. Refuse and he will drag you down with him." Obinna's stomach churned. He felt his pulse in his ears, his throat dry as dust. The air around him was thick, heavy with the weight of the decision he had to make. His brother, or his own life. Could he really sacrifice himself for Chuka? "Obinna," Ize said, his voice urgent. "You can't do this. You're playing with forces you don't understand. We need to leave. Now." But Obinna wasn't listening. His gaze was locked on the figure that had once been his brother. He could feel the pull, the temptation of power, of a way to fix everything. But deep down, he knew that what he was doing was wrong. This wasn't Chuka anymore. This was something that had been twisted and corrupted by death. "You're not my brother," Obinna said, his voice shaking but firm. "You're just a shadow of what he was, and I'm not going to let you take me." The figure's grin faltered, its form flickering violently. "Foolish mortal," it spat. "You could have had everything, power, wealth, immortality, and yet you choose to fight me." Obinna stood his ground, his fists clenched. "I choose life. I choose to live." In that moment, the air seemed to crackle with energy. The ground beneath Obinna's feet trembled violently, and a gust of wind whipped around him. The figure screeched in frustration, its form beginning to distort even further, as if it were struggling to hold itself together. The darkness that had been consuming the clearing slowly started to fade, retreating like a receding tide. "No!" the figure howled, its voice a shrill, otherworldly wail. "You cannot escape me!" But it was too late. The figure collapsed into a swirling mass of shadow, disappearing into the night as though it had never been there at all. Obinna fell to his knees, gasping for breath, his heart pounding. The air around him felt lighter, as though the oppressive weight of the ritual had lifted. The clearing was silent now, the only sound the rustling of the trees in the wind. Ize stood beside him, still wide-eyed and shaking. "You did it," he whispered. "You actually did it." Obinna didn't answer. His mind was still reeling from the encounter, from the decision he had made. It felt as though the very fabric of the world had been torn apart, and he had barely managed to stitch it back together. But one thing was clear to him now. Chuka was gone. He wasn't coming back, and the darkness that had claimed him would never be forgotten. As they made their way back to the village, the first rays of dawn began to peek over the horizon, casting a soft glow on the world around them. The village was still asleep, unaware of the nightmare that had unfolded just beyond its borders. Obinna walked in silence, his mind heavy with what had happened. Ize kept glancing at him, as though waiting for him to speak, but Obinna couldn't find the words. He had made the right choice, he told himself, but the guilt still gnawed at him. What if he could have saved Chuka? What if there had been another way? "Obinna," Ize said quietly, breaking the silence. "What now?" Obinna didn't look at him. He couldn't. He knew what Ize was asking, but he didn't have an answer. "Now," Obinna said slowly, "we live with what we've done." The days that followed were heavy with silence. Life carried on as usual, but Obinna's mind was far from the ordinary rhythm of daily life. He sat alone in mansion, staring at the ground, his thoughts consumed by Chuka's death and the dark ritual that had followed. What had he done? Had he truly saved himself, or had he just unleashed a darkness that would follow him forever? Mazi Ize's presence was constant, though his attitude had changed. He no longer seemed like the sly nightclub owner. Instead, he was quieter, more watchful, as though the same terror that had gripped Obinna had found its way into his own heart. "What are you thinking about?" Ize asked one evening, standing in the doorway of Obinna's house. Obinna didn't respond at first. He wasn't sure how to explain the weight that had settled over him, the unease that filled every part of his being. Finally, he sighed. "I don't know. I thought that I could make everything right, that I could save him. But now, I feel like I've lost everything." Ize stepped into the room and closed the door behind him. "You didn't lose everything," he said quietly. "You saved yourself. Chuka, he's gone. But you made the right choice." Obinna shook his head. I don't know. Sometimes I hear his voice in my dreams. It's like he's still here, just waiting for me to join him. Ys frowned. That's just your mind playing tricks on you. The power of that ritual, it's strong. It can mess with your head, make you believe things that aren't real. But Obinna wasn't convinced. He had felt it, something pulling at him, something dark and hungry, like an unseen hand reaching from the shadows. He couldn't shake the feeling that the danger wasn't over. It was only just beginning. A week passed, and Obinna couldn't escape the restless thoughts that plagued him. He found himself walking to the edge of the town, near the old cemetery where his brother had been buried. It was a quiet place, surrounded by tall trees, the perfect spot to think, or to run from his own fear. As he stood there, staring at the grave where Chuka's body lay, the wind picked up, rustling the leaves above him. It was a strange, cold wind, one that made his skin crawl. He closed his eyes, breathing in the familiar scent of the earth, trying to calm himself. But then he heard it, the soft whisper of a voice on the wind. Obinna. His heart froze in his chest. The voice. It was his brother's. He knew it. He could feel it in his bones. Chuka, Obinna whispered, his voice barely audible. Obinna, you cannot escape me, the voice whispered again, a hollow, haunting echo. I am still here, and I will not rest. Obinna's blood ran cold. He turned quickly, his eyes scanning the trees around him, but there was no one there. He ran back to the town, his heart pounding in his chest, the feeling of being watched growing stronger with every step. He was running on the street and screaming at the same time. People gathered around him because he was a well-known man in Enugu area. Obviously, Obinna has ran mad. He could not control his emotions again. He kept seeing Chuka everywhere, calling him to come. Luckily for him, his girlfriend came for him. He was taken to the psychiatric hospital where he was being treated for 6 months. Obinna became well again, but he regretted his action. He told his friends, I thought money can do all things, but now I have learned a very big lesson. I have learned to surrender everything to God, my maker. I will never chase vanity again, he said. His friends celebrated his sanity and restoration with him.
And so, the city lights kept shining, but the shadows that danced behind them would never be the same. Obinna Nwokedi learned, too late, that money can buy many things, but not peace, not forgiveness, and certainly not life. In chasing the impossible, he awakened forces of violence. In chasing the impossible, he awakened forces far beyond his control. And while the streets of Enugu may return to their noisy rhythm, the whispers of what happened will echo forever in silence. One outstanding lesson. There is a line that should never be crossed, and when you use darkness to fight pain, it always demands something greater in return. Love stories that grip your soul and leave you breathless? Then don't just watch, join the family. Subscribe to Olaide Story World, where African stories are told with heart, suspense, betrayal, and magic. New episodes, twists you never see coming, real emotions, rich culture, unforgettable characters. Click that subscribe button now. Turn on the bell so you never miss a heartbeat. Like, share, comment. Let's grow together. This is more than a story. It's a movement. Be part of it. Subscribe today.